And so the reason that buyers are so interested in evaluating how fast you've been growing historically perspective is because it's a strong indicator of how you're going to grow after the acquisition, right? Now, there's a whole myriad of things that the buyer is going to be bringing to the table that hopefully will promote organic growth post-close. But the one thing they really want to look at is, okay, how has this firm grown on their own? And they use that as an indicator for what they can expect from a future perspective.
Alan, Darby, Jacqueline Martinez, this is the Buyer's Boardroom. Learn the most about who you are today and where you want to be after. Welcome back, friends and family. This is the Buyer's Boardroom. I'm your host, Rick Music, and with me, as always, the lovely Jacqueline Martinez and the powerful Alan Darby, who are the Zen masters of all things M&A. And here we are, episode 3. Guys, congratulations. The reviews are in on episode 2. You guys crushed it. The ball hasn't landed yet. So let's keep it up. We've got a lot to unpack. Actually, this is an interesting episode because it kind of dovetails off of episode 2. And we're going to focus a little bit on growth and what kinds of growth there are. But something kind of funny, we touched base on our last episode about attractiveness to a seller to a buyer, right?
Right.
And I actually rather enjoyed that because I can, put some of that into my actual personal life. But outside of personality issues, the number one factor buyers are looking for are growth. But why is understanding organic growth so important to for a buyer to understand? What's the gist of that?
Yeah. Well, it's something that, we do want to be clear that broadly speaking, buyers are interested in what was generally called the cultural aspects of the partnership, and so that tends to be the qualitative things that we spent a bit of time talking about in that last episode. However, they're making an investment, right? They're potentially writing a check for millions, if not tens of millions of dollars for those assets, and they want to return them, right? So it's a talent acquisition, a geographic expansion, all these things. But at the end of the day, they're looking to make a return on their investment. So the question, Rick, is really where do buyers make their return? And we're going to promote a future episode. Our next one is going to be with our old colleague, Matt Breaker, who is a partner at Merchant Investment Management. And they've made investments into 80 different RIAs. So they certainly know what they're talking about when it comes to determining how a firm is likely to perform, financially speaking, after that post-acquisition. And so we'll spend a lot of time from the PE back firm's perspective on how they view things. But in general, you can think of the sources of return for any buyer in 3 forms, okay? The first component of the return is simply the cash flow that they're acquiring, right? So they're valuing your business largely based on the amount of free cash flow or EBITDA that they're acquiring. They have a cost of capital from whatever their source of capital is. And the net of that trade should be a positive return to the buyer, okay? But the thing that people need to understand is that's not a sufficient source of return typically to entice a sophisticated buyer into acquiring your practice. The reason is if we're not factoring any growth post-acquisition, that cash flow stream, because clients are leaving, clients are dying, they're withdrawing money, that will gradually decline over time. And so factoring their cost of capital with that reality means that wouldn't be enough to motivate someone to acquire your business. So that's the first one. The second source of return would be what we call the delta of the deal. And Jacqueline, I want you to kind of take this because it's very important. I'll explain what it is, and you can tell us why buyers don't really put an over amount of emphasis on this one. It's essentially the reality that the buyer, the larger entity, has a higher value than what they're valuing your practice at. So let's say they acquired you for 8 times EBITDA, but the buyer's EBITDA valuation, the multiple be applied to it, was 15. So there's a 7-turn delta. The moment they buy $1 of EBITDA at 8, now worth 15, they picked up 7 turns of that multiple on their balance sheet. So Jacqueline, why would a buyer not?
Yeah, for whatever's left over, Jacqueline, why don't you finish that thought?
Yeah.
Perfect. Right. Well, I mean, it's not, yes, it is an overnight pickup if they were to go to market and they were to recap or have some sort of liquidity event on that. But more often than not, it doesn't happen right away. So it's kind of a theoretical, very real, but not immediate impact on the balance sheet, impact on cash flow. This is when there is an exit that they're modeling into their return math. Okay, if we exit at the 12 in your example, then the returns would look this way with our cost of capital. And it's very real value, particularly if there is integration of a lot of services and technology, and there's EBITDA improvement that's coming from that. And it's not purely a financial play here of that arbitrage. But it's not overnight in terms of the cash flow impact.
Yeah, and it's highly reliant on the market, right? Multiples ebb and flow. They don't persist and go up all the time. They could go down. So it's like an unknown quantity, value until there is an exit for the buyer, right? And so you've got cash flow, the return on their cash, the EBITDA that they've acquired, not sufficient enough. There's the delta picked up between what they've acquired you and what they're worth. More impactful, probably still not sufficient enough for them to entice them to do it. The third component of return comes from the growth of their acquisitions post-close. Okay, and that's what we're broadly calling organic growth. And so the reason that buyers are so interested in evaluating how fast you've been growing historically perspective is because it's a strong indicator of how you're going to grow after the acquisition, right? Now, there's a whole myriad of things that the buyer is going to be bringing to the table that hopefully will promote organic growth post-close. But the one thing they really want to look at is, okay, how has this firm grown on their own? And they use that as an indicator for what they can expect from a future perspective. Now, the thing that we need to understand is, which is a big misconception out there, is what do they mean when they say organic growth? Okay, a lot of people, Jacqueline, they think they've been growing fantastically, and I'm speaking of the seller. But what they're doing is they're looking at their gross asset growth or their gross revenue growth. And the fallacy is that when you look at, say you were at 100 million in January 1, and at the end of the year, you were 150 million in assets. Okay, you would conclude that you grew 50%, and you did, right? But it's not all organic growth. What we need to do is evaluate what portion of that growth came from the stock market. And any growth attributed to the stock market will be removed from the calculation through the lens of the buyer. And so they're looking at a metric, we call it the golden metric here. It's called net new assets, which is essentially looking at influx of dollars. So you could have new client acquisition, existing clients adding to their accounts, and then you subtract clients leaving. So clients terminations, you subtract clients dollars that have been withdrawn from their existing accounts. Those types. So you do the net flows coming in minus the net flows going out, and that equals your true net flows. That's the metric they're going to be looking at to determine how much you grow. Okay, so it's not, and Jacqueline, you can speak to this. A lot of firms tell us that growing great, we're going to love our growth. And then when we do the net new asset calculation, that doesn't tell quite the same story.
Yeah, I think it comes down to how, in general, how we've seen business owners evaluate their business. They're looking at their annual prints on the ADV and seeing those numbers increasing. They're thinking about the new assets coming in the door each year. We brought in 20 million, 50 million, whatever it might be during that year, but not necessarily thinking about both lead clients that have moved on for whatever reason and just other distributions that have happened that are detracting from those things. So the more that we can isolate the story, and maybe there's a really great story there that some acquirers will look at and say, wow, you've really created a unique strategy around bringing in new clients, and we would love to deploy that across our other offices. It's a great opportunity to really tell that story of what's been successful and how a partnership can help accelerate that growth too.
So Rick, back to your question, it's important. We had a firm come through recently, and if I'm correct, they were telling us they were having organic growth of 27% a year. You look back at their 3-year trend, 27% a year. When we did the net new asset calculation, it was minus 2%, right? So the conclusion was that you're losing assets through the buyer's perspective. even though they thought that they crushed it with 27%, but it was all driven by the market. So it's important to distinguish where your growth is coming from.
So, Alan, Jacqueline, are you telling me that if I don't have good NNA growth, then I'm going to have trouble finding a buyer? Is that because it sounds like that's what you're saying?
No. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it's not. You can find a buyer. Like there are myriads of buyers who would likely purchase your practices. It's not like if you don't have positive net new asset growth or strong positive net new asset growth, you're not going to be able to find a partner for you. What we're essentially wanting you to know is don't expect a premium valuation. When we quote like EBITDA ranges, what EBITDA number would be applied? What multiple would be applied to your EBITDA? It's a range, a high, mid, low. And if you were low on the net new asset growth factor or had negative, we're saying don't expect the premium, be on the premium end of the range. So you can still find a partner. It's just the expectation of valuation probably needs to be metered given your growth rates.
Well, okay. Well, since we're talking about ranges, and we're listening at home, what are low, medium, and high growth rate ranges then?
High, exceptional, anything double digits would be exceptional and really exciting to any buyer. And there's probably a really unique client acquisition story there that buyers would love, and could be like one of those examples of being able to roll that out across their network. Average would be maybe 5 to 9%, and then anything below 5 and certainly anything negative would be low.
Yeah, so it doesn't, like, those numbers are not like earth shattering. If a firm came to us and they were 7% net new asset growth rates, we're like, awesome. You're going to be looked at very favorably. So it's not like you have to hit some huge numbers once you've stripped out the market, but certainly anything below 5, or negative, it's not no bueno. Not so good.
So they always say, like, if you're not growing, it's the opposite, right? I guess if I'm a buyer, what are the acceptable reasons if they ask you why you're not growing? What are the ones they want to hear?
Awesome question. So one, just if you haven't been growing, or you've had negative growth, just accept that that's going to be a red flag, and we're going to have to create a narrative around it. So your question is actually really good. What's the reason you haven't been growing? And we do think that there are some valid reasons that a buyer would go, okay, there's nothing wrong here. They just need help. And buyers love that, when they feel like they can come in and deliver real value to you to fix things that are optimal. Okay, so what would be an acceptable reason? The number one thing that I would say, Jacqueline, would be that you've hit a ceiling of complexity. Like you've grown, right? You have been growing, but you've grown so fast, you kind of outpaced your ability to support and deliver the exceptional service that you always have. You don't have the people, the resources, that kind of thing. Okay, right. So that, and we would be able to point to, okay, look at their past track record. They had growth, they had great growth, but then they just kind of plateaued and leveled out because they couldn't find the people, talent, they didn't have the money to invest in resources. That's kind of an acceptable reason. You still might not get a premium offer, but they're not going to see anything like wrong with that picture, right?
Right. So like you're free to allocate resources, marketing dollars. You want to get back into what's been great for you historically, but
So we also hear this one, like people they're getting ready to grow.
Sounds like it's going to be a good one.
Yeah, they've invested. They'll tell us, okay, our growth rates are low, but it's because our profitability is low, rather, and we've made these investments in people, technology, whatever, in anticipation of growing. So they're trying to turbocharge us to grow. But Jacqueline, what's the reality?
Yeah, I mean, the cynical part of me is like, how long have we been investing in this growth, and what is the strategy, and what's holding you back from that success, and
what's been the result?
What's been the result, if any? Like, how do we turn this from an idea to execution and new assets? And
but they don't ever give us, like, we made the decision, like, strategically 3 years ago to invest in 3 additional people for these purposes of growth, and since we made that investment, we have had this linear acceleration of growth. They don't ever do that. It's just like, yeah, we just haven't quite gotten there yet. And that kind of falls on deaf ears a bit, so it's like, we get it. You made the investments to grow, hasn't paid off, right? And so how long are we going to keep this bloated P&L before you make a good business decision to trim it down and get back to a normal range of profitability? So that's an issue. But the worst thing that you can say as a reason for not growing is you don't want to grow. That probably is the most negative thing. Again, I'm not saying you wouldn't be able to find a buyer for your business if that's the case. But the last thing that the buyer, again, their number one source of return comes from post-acquisition growth, is organic growth. The last thing they want to hear is you're not interested in it. Now I will say, and what I mean by that is like, you want to go to the beach or you want to go play golf. What I often, when we get kind of granular with the seller, often they're just kind of maxed out. They're stressed out. They don't need to take any more clients. But they have juniors on the team that are quite open to growing. So we need to make sure we understand when a seller says they're not interested in growth, to unpack that a bit. Sometimes when we do so, they're quite open to growing. What they mean is they just don't want to add more hours to their work week. They don't want to do it anymore. Like they're perfectly fine with training others or leading the charge of mentoring other advisors who do want to grow. That's okay. But we don't want to paint the picture to the buyer that the moment we transact, write me a multi-million-dollar check and I'm going to play golf. That's like that thing that they don't want to hear.
Well, it can be really hard to conceptualize too, like what would look like when I'm not also overseeing all the accounting and the HR and just I'm on the investment committee and I'm doing all these things and understanding a world where I'm freed up to just do my highest and best use, focus on business development, and maybe I'm spending less hours, but it's more productive towards growing the revenue. And like I always love once we've identified which buyer is really an appropriate match for a given prospect and connecting them with advisors that have already joined the firm to help echo what we're saying of things that will come off of their plate.
Well, you're right. Sometimes when we talk about growth and the need to grow after the partnership, that the seller here is, I got to work 80 hours a week. No, that's not what we mean. All right, we're gonna remove things from your plate, give you resources and all that stuff. We mean growth in the buyer's group. So that needs to be clear. Thanks for that, Jack.
It's a little philosophical, I guess, too, like the willingness to change the way that you're working and give up control of certain things that you have owned in the past, and just as part of really integrating oneself into a larger firm and all the services that are offered to you. But, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. And we're up against it. We can spend all day on this, but net new assets, organic growth. How are you factoring all this into your conversations? I mean, this is how do you present this in a manner that they're going to get it and understand and kind of follow your lead?
Well, I think part of it is just kind of helping them understand, like, where does the growth come from? Like, where does the buyer anticipate growth coming from? That typically alleviates a lot of the concern that you're just going to be turned into a robot that's out there, just go get all the assets and that's all you care about. So the first thing that we want to get on the table here is that growth doesn't come from eliminating expenses. Like that's one way to increase profitability and that's something that we see a lot of firms. It's like there's a scary PE monster that exists out there where the investor is looking to extract profit from their acquisitions by slashing and burning staff, just making everyone work ridiculous amounts. That's not the case.
Never seen that.
Have we seen that ever?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's a war for talent. If anything, they want to add valuable team members. So they're not looking to they're not looking to increase profitability and therefore their return by eliminating team members. Certainly they don't want to jeopardize the revenue stream that they just acquired, right? So and in our business, we all know that the revenue stream is directly tied to the clients. And who controls that? Well, the lead advisors and the operational support staff. And so they're not looking to remove those people and degrade the client relationship as a result. So returns don't come from reduction of operating expenses. That would be kind of like a de minimis return over time. You can only do so much before you're actually ruining the very asset that you bought. So, returns truly do come from organic growth, and that is really, really important for sellers to understand, and why the buyers are so interested in evaluating what your net new asset growth has been, historically speaking.
I got a quick question, sidebar. What percentage of the deals that you guys have been involved in have had just the seller leaving on their own after a year? I mean, like walkaway deals or something like that. Are they a high percentage of the deals, or does that not happen very often because they get it too? Meaning, no, I want to stick around and grow.
It's very rarely. Like, what would you say, Jacqueline? Like, I would say like less than 10% of the sellers, who we are involved with. I can't speak for all acquisitions, but the ones that Alaris works with, it's usually the seller in this scenario. We say seller, that's why we call it a partnership opportunity, Rick, because they're not looking to sell and exit. They're looking to partner with a new buyer who can solve problems for them, bring new resources, improve their quality of life, improve their ability to serve their clients. There's, of course, they're looking for an expanded economic opportunity as a result of the partnership too, but they're not looking to leave. And so it's that we do encounter firms who tell us that they're looking, partners who are looking to exit within a very short time period. I will say anecdotally that in those cases, it's usually a result of burnout, and if they do transact, even with that mindset of leaving in a short term, after they're on the other side of the partnership, they find they can stay a lot longer because life is a lot better. They don't have to carry the heavy burden or load that they were previously. And so they end up turning that 1 year time horizon into a 3, 5, 7 year time horizon.
Yeah, the camaraderie of being with other like-minded advisors, and it's just, really see like refuel and the excitement of doing what they do. So
you're using this term partnership. You guys have said something on, you say it all the time. You say post-close a lot. You finish sentences post-close so many times, and that's resonating to me. And, for those listening, I guess, case study here. Let's say I'm a firm, I'm doing my net new asset growth, and we know what that means now. My net new asset growth is at 7%. And Jacqueline, if my memory serves you correctly, that's pretty good, right? 7's
right.
Good. Well, how is a buyer going to help me increase that number? What can buyers do now post-close to help me grow with them, as opposed to saying, you need to grow more, welcome aboard? What are buyers doing to help me do that?
So we think of like this is the buyer value proposition to their advisors. And it's like it's a value stack, and the higher up the stack, the harder it is to pull off. But so we start with the first layer of what a buyer can do to help you grow is get you out of all the stuff that you don't enjoy doing and shouldn't be doing probably, right? So that's simplification of the back office, accounting, payroll, compliance, technology management, billing, all the unfun stuff that you or someone on your team is doing. That's kind of like table stakes, right, Jacqueline? That's like everyone does that today.
Exactly.
Like they're going to do that.
It used to be a competitive edge. Now it's just that needs to happen. If you're going to be in an acquisition game, it needs to happen.
Yeah. So
filling out spreadsheets and stuff.
Yeah, first order of business is clear the decks operationally. So what does that mean? That means you get capacity, right? So now you just picked up time to go deploy elsewhere. And ideally, you would be in new client acquisition or mentoring other advisors to do the same. So the second rung of the ladder on the value stack that a buyer can bring is practice management. We're going to do a podcast with Stephanie Bogan, one of the premier practice management consultants, here in a few weeks. We're super excited about that. But that is an incredibly valuable thing that a partner can bring to you, is help you operate better. Most smaller practices, and I was this guy. I had my own practice for 20 years. I thought I was a great advisor. My team loved me, but I wasn't a great operator. I wasn't a great at managing people and process and all that. So a good partner will come alongside you and help you do all that stuff, train your people, define roles and responsibilities, get the rainmakers and the non-rainmaking functions, all that. So that's practice management. Okay, so that's another area. So we've gotten capacity. Now they're helping me operate better. So by default, things should improve. Next would be expansion of services and capabilities. Okay. How do you make me more attractive to a client? You could do that by new services. Okay. So if I'm doing portfolio management and financial planning, well, what if I layered in tax preparation or qualified plan expertise or corporate trustee work or any number of things that buyers bring to the table? Now I have an expanded toolkit. Presumably I'll be able to attract more clients. Expertise. Do they have advanced estate planning attorneys, investment banking personnel, banking, whatever it is, like they expand your services and resources. And then finally is organic growth. How do you help me drive new clients, qualified clients, mind you, through the door that match with my service set and who I want to serve as a client, right? And so that is where, like, how can a buyer help me? It's through that progression of things that buyers bring to the table, and they're all different. Some focus on others more heavily than others, but and some just don't even address some of them. They want to stay in certain areas of that value set. But that's how, Rick. So that's a very important question, and people need to understand that should be really front and center of evaluating who's a good fit for you.
Well, the irony here, guys, is it looks like growth is so important. I think it's kind of great that buyers actually help you do it. I mean, if they all want it, but it seems like some buyers are uniquely gifted in helping, or maybe some are not quite as.
Right. And sellers are really starting to ask about that. Certain ones that are really interested in growing. They know what they're doing today. They know what they don't know, what's not working well, but they're in the process of evaluating who's the right partner for me. That's becoming a more important thing, and really vetting and understanding the track record, like beyond custodial referral programs, which are fantastic, but they're hard to get into, and you don't control the longevity of that as a national firm. It could be turned off theoretically at any time. What other programs internally are there, and let me speak with the advisors that have been successful in those programs too.
Yeah. Well, it's a great segue because we're getting ready to interview a gentleman that is near and dear to Alaris, Pat McClain, co-CEO of AllWorth. We think AllWorth is perhaps one of the best national acquirers at driving organic growth on behalf of their partners. So when I spoke to that value stack that buyers bring to the table, Rick, they're one of the best at it. But they're also they're backed by private equity, so they can speak to why it's important for firms to have demonstrated historic growth as their means of evaluating their ability to grow in the future and adopt their organic growth strategies and such like that. So super excited to interview him and hear what he has to say on the topic, because Pat has a lot to say about every topic. So we're excited to hear him talk about this. Alan, Darby, Alaris Acquisitions. I'm super excited to have one of our favorite, not only buyers, but personalities in the industry, Pat McClain, co-CEO of AllWorth. Welcome, Pat, to the Buyers Boardroom.
Thank you.
Yeah, so the topic, Pat, of the day is, why is organic growth so important to a buyer? Okay. So we're going to unpack that and how you think about when you're talking to a prospective new partner for AllWorth, how you guys think about it. Some of your thoughts on like what are, how to deliver organic growth without wrecking the life of the partners who are hardworking entrepreneurs. And then finally, what does AllWorth do to help their partners grow? But before we do, why don't we just take a few minutes and maybe just give us a little info on yourself and AllWorth, how you started, kind of where you position yourself to advisors and clients. To flip a quick commercial on AllWorth.
So I'm 60 years of age. I've been doing this for over 30 years. Started the firm 30 years ago, practicing financial advisor to this day. We took capital the first time when we were at $2.4 billion with Parthenon was our capital partner. And then we traded again in December of 2020 to another capital partner, which is Ontario Teachers Pension Plan and Lightyear. And we were at $10 billion then. And today we're somewhere around 17 billion. I've done 29 or 30 integrations. Small firms, big firms, done as small as 90 million and as large as, I think 2.2 million or 2.2 billion. So across the board.
I like how you call them integrations and not acquisitions, because there's a difference, right?
There is a big difference between an integration and an acquisition.
All right. So thank you for that intro. So you guys are one of the most active acquirers in the country today and have been for some time. Congratulations on your success, by the way. So the topic we're wanting the seller to understand is, why does a buyer care about your historic growth? So think of it through the spectrum of attractiveness. And I know there's other things that you're going to evaluate, but when you're looking at how attractive a potential partner is, and we're not talking about the cultural aspects of it, do you like them, those kind of things. This is a financial evaluation. Why is organic growth important? They're historical growth.
So first of all, because if you're growing now, the likelihood that you continue to grow is much, much greater than if you're just flat. And even if growth is stalled, as a buyer in this space, we want to understand why the growth stalled. So if the growth stalled because the advisor was maxed out and didn't have the risk tolerance to add more staff, right? So let's just say your growth stalled 2 years ago, and part of it has to do with everything about risk tolerance. Advisors won't really admit it oftentimes, but look, I've been there. You grow the firm and you kind of plateau for a period of time. And in order to grow it again, it's a stair step, you have to actually invest more money in the business, which means one of two things. Either you borrow money or you take a lower income or less money out of the firm for a period of time and reinvest, which means your risk increases, but your income doesn't go up automatically. There's a lag. There's a lag. So if there's growth, what it tells us is that your mindset is right, the personality is right, that you're interested in actually growing the enterprise, that you believe that your offering adds value to the marketplace. If your growth is stalled over the last 18, 24, 30 months, oftentimes that's okay if we can tell that it's stalled because you're maxed and you're looking for a solution, which is fine. By the way, everyone measures growth X market. So
Net new assets. Yep.
Net new assets, X market, net new assets, right? Existing client, new money, new client, new money. So you're looking for that mindset. And quite frankly, I've done a lot of these integrations. You find that firm that's got that growth mindset, and then you splash a little bit of marketing on there and operational efficiencies, and you actually free up that advisor's time, right? You free it up.
Big point. That's freeing, and we try to really hammer this home with firms when we talk about growth, because I find that initially, particularly the ones that are articulating a desire to grow, even the ones that have maxed out over the reason for not growing, there's a point in the conversation where they start thinking, oh, wait a second. Does this mean I'm going to have to work like 100 hours a week now? Am I going to have to just kill myself to serve at the altar of the growth God? It's like, what is that what you mean, Pat? Because you said something, get them out of things that they shouldn't be doing. They're going to divest and a lot of the operational burden, freeing them. And that's a big part of the value proposition that AllWorth brings to the table, right?
Yes, correct. So here's I integrated a firm in Walnut Creek, California, Mark Schoen. And by the way, I think he was at $330 million when we integrated. His first full year with us, he brought in $50 million in new assets, right?
Right.
Which is north of 15% growth. His second year, he did over $70 million in new assets, right? Year over year. And I asked him how. He said, it's this easy, Pat. He said, I gave up about 40% of what I was doing. He said, IT, HR, reviewing this, reviewing that, even asset management, financial plan, making all these decisions. Which, by the way, if you're a business owner and you really track your time to the 5-minute increment about where you spent your time, most business owners will find, financial advisors will find that they spend anywhere between 35 and 50% of their time in running the business.
I believe that.
The minutia. And a fish doesn't know it swims in water. It's really hard for them to see that because you're in it and you can't imagine another way. So when we integrated Mark Schoen, after the first year, I said, how'd you do it? He said, it was this easy. He said, I freed up about 40% of my time. I gave 20% of that time back to the organization, and I kept 20% for myself. And so, so you're working less now. Oh, it was, absolutely work a lot less. But I'm only working on the things that I actually am good at and like doing, which is meeting with clients or adding value to the firm in some other manner. And I thought that was probably, and that's not my quote, it's his quote, Mark Schoen, that was the best way ever to explain, how it works, because you're not running the business. You're not dealing with compliance or software systems or HR, or all those things that are required.
Yeah, it's growth in your world, surrounded by resources. It's removal of things that don't drive the needle for growth or don't reward them personally to get back to why they got in the business in the first place, which was serving clients or mentoring those to do the same. That's the top reason firms don't grow. Like they're just spending too much time in those areas.
Yeah. And by the way, part of it is capacity. So what happens is, look, I've been doing this 30 years. I've created this own problem for myself and other advisors in our firm. Those that are best at creating growth have a tendency to fill their calendars up faster that can no longer take more clients.
Right.
That's just the reality of it. So the way ours are structured is, if you think about it, like the guy that has tons of time on his calendar or the lady that has tons of time because they can't close new business, it doesn't make them a bad advisor. They just can't, they don't know how to explain the value proposition very well to the client. So the idea is, when we go in there, the firm, we actually try to take some of that client service or even move clients off an advisor's calendar to someone else that is probably better suited at servicing those clients, right? So you can bifurcate your clients into, whatever levels you want. And it's okay for you to give. If you want to grow, look, you're going to have to give something up. That's just...
Yeah. No, I hear you. I get it. Well, so is it true, Pat, to say that as a buyer, I mean, there are things that you're looking for in all of your partnerships. And there's a great deal. I've worked with you on a number of transactions, and I know how important the cultural aspects of the partnership is. But let's just talk from a return perspective. Where does AllWorth make the majority of their money in an acquisition? Is it from the cash flow that you acquire? Is it from the delta in the equity exchange, or is it an organic growth?
It's organic growth. Yeah. And so when we're looking at a firm, what we're trying to do is to figure out how engaged this person is going to be post-transaction. Which, by the way, it's hard to see, because normally you don't give someone a check for $10 million and then tell them that they're going to have to work their butts off, because that $10 million may change their view of the world significantly. But if they've got that fire and they really want to feed it, and we can feed it, then they're engaged, right? And so part of that to show the engagement is you look at what they've done historically, and then you think, all right, what happens if we came into your world and you didn't have to do this, and this anymore? Would you still be as engaged? So when we go back, we track every integration, as most firms do, that they've ever done. And the number one contributing factor to success is growth before transaction and engagement after transaction.
So that's a great. I haven't heard it put that way, but I'm glad, because that is when you're trying to evaluate their potential for growth. The historic growth is the number one indicator of whether, and you would expect it to be improved as a part of AllWorth, of course. So that's fascinating to hear it said that way.
But they have to be engaged post, right? So, and sometimes everyone's different. I mean, what motivates me may not motivate you. And so, it's to figure out what that motivation is. What's that engagement?
Well, growth could come from me as an advisor being equipped and given capacity and resources to go serve clients directly. It could also come from me mentoring other advisors.
That's right. That's right.
So that comes in different forms. And so whatever the seller is looking for in changing how they work or their quality of life, and you can accommodate that. Okay, so I know the audience probably doesn't know that AllWorth is probably, if not the top organic growth driver on behalf of their partners in the country. If we talk about, to sellers, we talk about the value proposition that the buyers bring to the table. And it's a step, like building a brick wall. The first layer is removal of operational burden, centralizing all the stuff that they shouldn't be doing. Then it's practice management competence, help me define roles and responsibilities and make me operate more efficiently and better. Then it's expansion of services and expertise, make me more attractive to clients. And then finally, it's, can you actually bring new clients through the door on my behalf? And that, to me, is the holy grail of value proposition. A lot of buyers talk about it, but not a lot of them actually deliver it. And so I want to give you the opportunity to tell a little bit about the story of how AllWorth drives organic growth, because you're exceptional at it.
So I'll spend a minute there. But what you just said there was something really interesting, which is the expansion of service. So we've been hearing about in our industry for years and years that there's going to be price compression. Expansion of service is price compression. It's one and the same. It's just got a different name. So if I'm actually either giving away tax or discounting tax or adding something to that relationship that is either below fair market or not charging for it at all, that is an expansion of service, which therefore would effectively lower my margins, which therefore actually is price compression over a long period of time. But it's table stakes now. It's table stakes. All the big firms like AllWorth and WEG and Creative and all of them are coming to the table with either with tax and or estate or both, right? That's table stakes. The other thing is that operational efficiencies, we're assuming that everyone's got those. We're also assuming that everyone's got a robust asset management platform, including tax loss harvesting using something like 55 IP or direct indexing or ESG or whatever else you want to call it. So those are table stakes, right? Then it becomes like, how are you going to grow this thing organically? And I think we're good at it. The best in the industry, by the way, whether you like them or not, is Fisher in terms of organic growth. You say his name and people are like, the great or he's not great. I don't care. I don't care. He's got the most robust marketing for an independent RIA in the industry.
Right.
The people that have the most robust marketing are obviously Fidelity and Schwab, which, by the way, they are in our space and they are not going anywhere. So we actually, I have 26 people in the marketing department and a call center with, I don't know how many people, 8 or 9 people that schedule appointments for our advisors across the United States. So this year, we'll probably schedule somewhere close to 4,500 appointments for advisors that want new clients.
Now, these are qualified appointments, right? These have come through a process where your central team has vetted them to a degree, give them with some high-level value proposition, and really teed up this qualified appointment, put them on the calendar on behalf of your partner, right?
That's right. That's right. Yeah. And by the way, and we're on some of the custodial referral platforms as well.
Right.
As are most of my competitors are on custodial referral platforms, which is a form of marketing and teeing up those appointments. Those are all. But the idea that you can have a robust growth engine that sits outside of a custodial referral platform.
Where I think I'm a fan of the custodial referral programs. I've seen them drive billions of dollars of work.
Unbelievable.
It's great, right? The only concern is that you don't control that. It's you're at the beck and call of the firms that are driving that on your behalf. The thing I like in the AllWorth scenario is you're not reliant on anyone to drive those appointments on behalf of your advisors. It's like this omni-channel, constant outbound marketing. I mean, you have 26 full-time people on the marketing team, plus another 9 or so on the call center. I mean, so
that's right.
35 people, 100% every day of their life is devoted to driving organic growth on behalf of your partners. So that's
right. That's right. And in addition to that, we have a whole different division that works in niche markets. So When I say niche market, we work in airlines, we work in healthcare, we work in telecommunications, and we work on energy production and distribution in different marketplaces across the U.S., which is we actually do workshops for company employees in that space. It's kind of like, Edelman Financial Engines has got that, which is a great lead system, by the way, for Edelman Financial Engines.
Okay, so I'm going to ask one more question. You answered the first one. You didn't. For everyone listening, I did not prep Pat McClain for any of the answers he's giving us today. The first one you answered, like in our podcast before, we were interviewing Jacqueline and I, and the number one acceptable reason for not growing is hitting, you get a wall of complexity. Like you've grown and you just, you're maxed out, right? And so, what would you say is not an acceptable reason for not growing?
Because you own a lifestyle business.
Got it. You want to play golf? You want to go to the beach? You're not interested in growing, right?
That's a large part of our industry. They're lifestyle businesses, and you're not going to change that. God bless them that they're happy with those lifestyles. Half our industry, by the way, they'll never transact. They'll just retire and not tell anyone. Including their employees and their clients. It will become 100% reactive to what's taking place in the business.
That's fantastic. It's true, though. The lifestyle businesses, they afford them this fantastic lifestyle. To an extent, I can see the reality of that, but they have to do everything. The entire business is reliant on them. When they go on vacation, not really a vacation, because half their time is spent putting that fires back at the office.
Yeah, it becomes a very look. Marketing is a proactive event. You can run a business reactively, right? You're just responding to things that are coming at you. Marketing is very difficult because you actually have to be very, very proactive at it, and to do it correctly, you need to know what the cost of acquisition of a client is. So, we have a robust data science team behind it with analytics and insight, and that actually can tell me where a lead came from, how much it cost, how long they lived in the funnel, what the cost, who touched it in the funnel, and what the absolute cost per dollar of AUM it ran. So here's what happens, though, Alan. I see firms that will actually say, I'm going to grow, and they think that growth is dependent upon them spending more money on marketing. So they get a hold of an SEO firm, or they get a hold of someone that's doing seminars or workshops and they're going to put them on for, or they hire a marketing company and they think that that's going to grow. That can grow, but at what cost? So if you're spending money on marketing, you better be pretty darn sure you actually know what the return is. And it's very difficult if you think about our industry. Lifetime value of a client is massive. It's much higher in our industry than it is software as a service. Cost of acquisition can actually be quite high as well, as long as you're acquiring that lifetime value of a client. So in order to grow value of your business, the first thing you do is keep your existing clients, right? And then the second thing you do is actually bring on new clients and actually know how much it costs to actually bring those clients on. And then the third thing you do is, you make sure that my part is that it's an attractive place for firms to end up, and the platform is stable and growing at all times.
Well, just hearing you talk about how to measure, the dollars that you're investing in the program and the degree of sophistication tells me why you're so successful in it. So, look, Pat, it's been fantastic. Thank you very much for taking the time out of your busy day. We're thrilled to work with AllWorth. Certainly in the past, and hopefully on many more acquisitions in the future. So I appreciate you taking the time, and best of luck to you and the team there.
All right. Appreciate it, Alan. And we're back. Great interview again, Alan. You should do this for a living. So we're a little light on mailbag today. Those of you just joining us, Boardroom at AlerisAcquisitions.com, Boardroom at AlerisAcquisitions.com. It can be anything, buyer-related, seller-related, anything above relating to M&A, what buyers are looking for, anything you want to know. Drop a line and get to us. We do have one today, and this is interesting given some of the things that we've touched on, and next week's guest, Matt Brinker, that we'll tee up here in a minute. But I run a practice. What is better for getting capital? Partnering with an existing buying firm or going to PE? What are the ups and downs with that?
Okay, so I'm sure Jacqueline has a lot to say on this, but it's like a nuanced topic, right? Because it's like, what do you need the capital for?
Right.
Right?
Yeah. Like, where are you in the life cycle? How big is the firm? So maybe, yeah, if we think about it, like if you're a firm that's 2 billion plus, then
Is it an acquisition strategy?
Yeah.
You look just to add people. You want to invest in technology. You know, what's the reason? This is my opinion, Jacqueline. You share something if you disagree, but like if you're intending on acquiring, for example, like you want to go on a serial acquisition spree, like so many firms are doing today. Well, in that event, you probably do need to look to a what I'll call a permanent source of capital. And there's the traditional private equity route. There's actually newer entrants coming in the space that are more family office, longer term solutions for capital. So, it's not just private equity as a source of permanent capital, because you're gonna need to rely. You can't get into the acquisition game and start dating firms and then go get the cap. That's a recipe for disaster. So you need to know that you have a certain amount of dry powder to go deploy. Now, if you were looking just to, hey, we need to improve our technology and client experience, I would do that with debt. Wouldn't you, Jacqueline? If I didn't have the capital myself, I'd go borrow it.
yeah, I think it really depends. Right. Yeah. That might be a much cheaper way to do it. Maybe, I don't know, today's interest rate environment, but when evaluating private equity firm too, like if I think really understanding is there talent on the team there that has experience in what you're trying to do. And are they simply going to be taking their, fill in the blank 20% share of economics ongoing and not really partnering with you on the ideas to get things done? Do they have certain expertise that your team is lacking that will help you get to that next level? And if those answers are no, then it may not be the best path, and there may be cheaper ways to get it done, and still achieve the goals. Perhaps hire internally or hire an external partner that can work with you on that specific initiative instead.
Yeah, and the alternate route that is just securing capital yourself and doing it, I think there was a second part of his question, is should I just partner with someone else, like get acquired with someone?
Yeah, that was the other. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so that's a very viable pathway. It's really this is another podcast, but it's a question of autonomy. Like if you sell, a lot of people equate selling their firm, even a full acquisition, with a total loss of autonomy and control. That's not true. You can have a high degree of autonomy, still retain your entrepreneurial spirit and vision, and be fully acquired. You can still be an owner. You're rolling a portion of your valuation into the buyer's equity, or you could do a majority transaction where you're retaining. It's like, don't associate transacting with the firm as a loss of autonomy. So it really, to me, it's a matter of, do you want to do the work and go through the, frankly, brain damage it's going to take to build all this stuff, even with a capital partner? Because capital is capital, but you still have to go execute. So are you willing to put in the work, effort, and energy without making any more money, mind you, because you're going to be investing all the new profits if you're successful back into the business? Your enterprise value will expand, but you're not really going to make any more cash flow for a meaningful period of time until those investments pay off. And so it's a matter of, there's capital out there, right? Equity capital, debt capital, what have you, but it's really, what do you want to do with your life? And do you want to roll up your sleeve and go tackle the incredibly difficult task of building all this stuff? Because it's not just capital. So I like Jacqueline's answer about finding a capital partner with strategic expertise that they can bring to you. But beyond that, it's like, what do you want to do with your life? Would it be easier for you just to partner with someone who's already built it and gives you the amount of freedom and flexibility that you're accustomed to go execute? So that would be my answer.
Closing thoughts on that for any of you out there that have questions like this. Sometimes, as you can see, it's not a black and white answer. So other ways to explore this are booking a discovery call with the team here at Alaris, so we can unpack all kinds of things on one call, get a feel for your business, give you a better understanding of who you are today and where you might want to be tomorrow. We can help you get there. We're standing by, no obligation. That's going to just about do it for another great episode 3 of Buyers Boardroom. Kind of a big week next week. I'm going to tee up our next guest, Matt Brinker of Merchant Investments. He is going to give us a PE perspective to the world we live in. So we look forward to everybody coming.
Yeah, we're super excited. Matt, Jacqueline, and I, we have spent a lot of time together, and so it's going to be fun.
Well,
thank you, buddy.
Two of my favorite people, Alan Darby, Jacqueline Martinez. I am Rick Music. This has been the Buyers Boardroom. We will see you in a couple of weeks in our next episode.